Honesty has never been the best policy. We were fooled from birth, handed a slogan that had been amputated before it reached us, pinned to classroom walls and embroidered onto certificates by adults who themselves had never been told the missing half. The slogan should have read, "Honesty is the best policy in the rare environments designed to reward it." They cut the qualifier. The qualifier was the entire instruction. The men who cut it are not the men who paid the bill. Honesty is not virtue. Honesty is exposure. An intelligent man can spend 40 years bleeding into rooms that were designed to harvest the bleeding. There is a particular kind of man whose destruction is already written before the room turns against him. He wrote it himself, in ink, with both hands, while calling it character. He walked into that meeting believing his honesty was a credential. He left it as a transcript, every preference, every wound, everything he could not afford to lose, signed and dated by his own mouth. He thinks the people across the table listened because they cared. They listened the way predators listen. For inventory, stay with this. The thing he confessed is not the thing that destroyed him. The act of confession was. By the time he understands which sentence sealed it, the sentence is 3 years old, and the room he said it in has been redecorated by people who never invited him back. This is not a video about lying. This is a video about a category mistake. The mistake of believing that a man's honesty is a moral asset in environments that score it as a tactical liability. The mistake of confusing the people who applauded his transparency with the people who could afford it. The mistake of standing on a pulpit when the room he was actually in was a courtroom. Stay to the end. By the time this is over, you will have a name for the reflex that has been selling you out in every important room you have ever entered, and you will not need a second viewing to recognize it operating in your life by Friday. You will have a name for the slow, structural tax that has been quietly redirecting opportunities, women, alliances and inheritances toward men who said less than you, while you sat there counting your bills and calling them bad luck. And you will have one discipline, 3 operating principles used by every man who outlived his enemies for the last 400 years. None of it requires you to lie. All of it requires the single discipline you were trained from the playground onward to call cowardice. There is a sentence in your own past that did this to you. By the end of this video, you will know what to do with it. Hold it until then. The recognition will arrive in its own time. There is a difference between the truth and the disclosure of the truth. The first is a possession. The second is a transaction. An intelligent man, raised on the idea that honesty is the mark of strength, treats both as the same thing and pays the bill for the rest of his career. Watch what he does when stress enters the room. He explains. He clarifies. He offers the context the situation did not request. He thinks he is correcting a misunderstanding. He is filing the deposition that will be read back to him at his own funeral. Every additional sentence he speaks is a new piece of evidence the people listening did not have to work for. He is not defending himself. He is doing their reconnaissance for them. He is paying them to take notes. Most men do not pay for their own surveillance. Most men do not have to. The honest man volunteers. Cardinal Richelieu, the man who governed France from a chair behind the throne for nearly 2 decades, left behind a sentence that has been quoted by every interrogator who has read it since. Give me 6 lines from the most honest man alive, and I will find in them something with which to hang him. 6 lines. Not a confession, not a betrayal. 6 ordinary lines from an ordinary correspondence. The honest man does not understand what Richelieu understood. The trap is not what is hidden. The trap is what is offered. Anything offered is anything available. Anything available is anything weaponizable. The honest man, by the structure of his honesty, hands his interrogators the rope, the chair, and the platform, then waits, with his throat exposed, to be praised for his courage. He is not praised, he is processed. Stay with this. The intelligent man has been told since boyhood that honesty builds trust. This is half true in a way that is more dangerous than a clean lie. Honesty builds trust in the rare environments that reward it. In the common environments that punish it, honesty builds dossiers. He cannot tell which environment he is in because nobody told him environments were the variable. He was told the rule was universal. The people who taught him the rule were not the same people who would later test him on it. Schopenhauer wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves to be like other people. The honest man does the opposite. He refuses the forfeit and is then surprised when the other people, who have already done theirs, find him strange, find him excessive, find him a problem to be solved. They do not find him unbearable. They find him useful. There is a particular kind of usefulness that ends in a man being written out of his own life by people who used his disclosures as the source material. Watch the meeting again. The honest man speaks first. He thinks first speech is leadership. First speech is location. He has now placed himself on the map. The people who waited him out have noted the coordinates and adjusted their advance. He thinks he was setting the agenda. He was registering for the census. Look at Rome. The schoolroom version stops at the part where the politician is admired. The schoolroom version is a lie of omission. Marcus Tullius Cicero was the most honest mouth in the late Republic. He wrote what he thought. He spoke what he wrote. He believed that the eloquent disclosure of one's principles was the highest civic act available to a man. He had convictions, and he laid them out, in serial, in front of audiences, and preserved every word in writing so the people who missed it could read it at leisure. He treated rhetoric as the cleanest form of public bleeding. He was not wrong about the rhetoric, he was wrong about the bleeding. In the year 43 before Christ, Cicero wrote and delivered 14 speeches against Mark Antony. He called them, with a Greek precision that should have warned him, the Philippics, borrowing the name from Demosthenes' speeches against Philip of Macedon, a series whose author also did not survive his own clarity. Cicero knew the precedent and chose the title anyway. This is the signature of the bleeding man. He picks the historical example that warns him, decides he is the exception, and proceeds. The Philippics were brilliant. They were also, in Antony's hands, a list. After the second triumvirate sealed the proscription rolls, Antony asked specifically that Cicero's name be added. He did not need a reason. The reason had been delivered, in writing, in 14 installments, beautifully phrased. The men who came for Cicero on the road south did not have to argue with him. He had argued with himself, at length, for everyone. They cut his throat. Antony's wife, Fulvia, took the head and stabbed the tongue with her hairpin, over and over, for the record. The tongue was the asset. The tongue was the evidence. The tongue had drawn the map. Read that again. The tongue was the evidence. The honest man hears this story and locates the villain in Antony, in Fulvia, in the proscription rolls. These were the instruments. They are not the lesson. The lesson is that an intelligent man, with every advantage of education and language, opened himself across 14 documents and was surprised when the documents were used as documents. He thought the speeches were defenses. They were depositions. He thought the publication was permanent because it was eloquent. The publication was permanent because it was retrievable. There is no statute of limitations on something a man wrote down. This is the thing the schoolroom version does not say. The honest man's words are not destroyed when he is destroyed. The honest man's words are the destruction. Pause on that. There is a cost to disclosure that no honest man calculates correctly when he is young, because the bill arrives in a different decade, often delivered by people who were children when the disclosure was made. He thinks his words ended in the room he said them in. The room is bigger than the room. The room is everyone who will ever speak to anyone who was in that room. The room is the secretary. The room is the rival. The room is the man who was not invited but was told. The room is, above all, his own future, which inherits the words he said as if they were debts he co-signed without reading. The text you sent at 1 in the morning that you forgot about by Tuesday has been screenshotted by someone whose interests you misjudged. The screenshot is in a folder on a phone you will never see, in a conversation you have not been invited to. The screenshot is waiting. It is more patient than you are. The dinner where you joked about your manager, in a tone that was clearly a joke to you, has been quoted in 3 different rooms in 3 different tones, and at least one of the rooms decided you meant it. The colleague you confided in about your fear of being passed over was promoted past you within 18 months. He used the fear as a map. You drew it for him. Watch the women who have known him longest. The patient ones noticed the reflex years before he could name it. They did not announce the noticing. They adjusted around it, sometimes affectionately, sometimes by quietly relocating the center of their own lives to a place his disclosure could not reach. He thinks they grew distant, they grew accurate. There is a name for what happens in the honest man's body when the room applies pressure. It does not begin in his words. It begins in his nervous system. The reaction is not deliberate, it is trained. He has been trained, since the playground, to associate transparency with honor and silence with guilt. He has been trained to mistake his own trembling for moral clarity. Call this what it is: the bleed reflex. The bleed reflex is the involuntary urge to disclose under stress. Pressure enters the room. The honest man, who has never paused to ask whether the room deserves his disclosure, opens. He volunteers context. He fills the silence. He offers the qualifier the situation did not request. He thinks he is being clear. He is being legible. There is a difference. And the difference is the difference between a man with a private life and a man with a public file. Predators have no bleed reflex. They have studied yours. The first 30 seconds of any interaction with a bleed reflex carrier is a free intelligence briefing. The carrier will tell them what he is afraid of. He will tell them what he is ashamed of. He will tell them, when they wait long enough, the precise pressure point at which his composure breaks. He cannot help it. The reflex was installed before he could remember, by people carrying the same install in rooms that no longer exist. Now look at England. Sir Walter Raleigh, sailor, courtier, poet, soldier, a man whose intelligence was so unconcealed that the court of Elizabeth I was simultaneously dazzled by him and waiting for the moment he would say one thing too many. He could not stop writing. He could not stop speaking. He kept journals. He kept correspondence. He published opinions about colonies, religion, and the conduct of monarchs. He bled in inkwells. The court read everything. Elizabeth, who liked him, contained him. James I, who succeeded her in 1603, did not have her tolerance for legible men. By 1618, Raleigh had been imprisoned, released, sent on a final expedition to the Orinoco that he could not refuse, and recalled in disgrace. The original treason charge that had imprisoned him 15 years earlier was revived. There was no new evidence. There did not need to be. The evidence was the man's entire written life, which had been waiting in the archive for a king who needed it. He was beheaded at Westminster in October of that year. He made a speech at the scaffold, eloquent, ranging, full of disclosure. He could not stop. Not at the end. The executioner waited. The crowd noted the rhetorical flourishes. The head came off mid-paragraph. The lesson of Raleigh is not that he was killed by James. He was killed retroactively by every previous version of himself who had been unable to stop speaking. James was the bailiff. The debt had been accruing for 30 years. The bleed reflex does not register interest as it accumulates. The bill arrives whole, on a single morning, in a single courtyard, with the sun out and the crowd already watching. Most men carry a bleed reflex they have never inspected. They mistake it for sincerity. Sincerity is a private virtue. The reflex is a public liability. They are not the same thing, and confusing them is how an intelligent man becomes a footnote in someone else's promotion. Most men never see a scaffold. Most men experience the bill in the smaller, quieter form. The promotion that did not arrive, the partnership that cooled without explanation, the friend group that reformed without him in the center. The woman who said his openness was beautiful and then chose a man who could not be opened at all. He looks at the small bills and cannot connect them to the disclosures that paid them. The bills are not labeled. The bills do not need to be. The collector knows where to find him. Call this what it is: the honesty tax. The honesty tax is the cumulative cost levied on a man for being legible in environments that reward concealment. The rate is variable. The collector is invisible. The tax is paid in opportunities that quietly redirect to less readable men, in alliances that quietly reform around men who said less, in inheritances of position and trust that pass to the men whose interior lives were never available for inspection. There is no court. The collector is the room itself, which has been downgrading him every time he opened in pressure. The honesty tax is harder to see than the reflex that triggers it because it is structural. It does not happen in moments. It happens in the gaps between moments. The meetings that were held without him. The introductions that were made about him in his absence. The decisions that were already made by the time he was invited to the conversation that pretended to make them. He thinks he is participating. He is being managed. The information he gave them at the start of his career is the reason the information stopped flowing back. He thinks the tax began this year with this manager in this marriage. It has been compounding since his first school report. The teacher who praised him for being so open about his struggles was issuing the first invoice. The friend who said it was wonderful how he wore his heart on his sleeve was reading the sleeve. He kept signing and never once asked to see the agreement. He would supply the data. The room would supply the verdicts. By the time he understood the asymmetry, he had already filed 2 decades of returns. Now, look at France. Maximilien Robespierre, a lawyer, by training, of unusual intelligence and extraordinary moral conviction. He spoke in the National Convention as a man who believed his interior life was the public's redemption. He prosecuted the king with his words. He prosecuted his rivals with his words. He prosecuted abstractions, corruption, vice, weakness with the same words he used to prosecute people, and he could not tell the difference between the abstraction and the person because he had never closed the gap between his thoughts and his speech. Read what he said in the spring of 1794. Read the speeches. They are appalling and they are perfectly transparent. He named the categories of men he intended to destroy. He did not name the men inside the categories. The men inside the categories listened, identified themselves, and understood that the only way to remove the category was to remove the man defining it. On the evening of the 26th of July, 1794, Robespierre rose to give a speech demanding action against unnamed conspirators. He could not stop himself naming the species. He refused to specify the individuals. The convention waited for him to read the list. There was no list. There were only the categories he had spent 2 years specifying. The men in the categories voted. The next day, they arrested him. The day after that, they guillotined him. Robespierre's death is studied by historians as a political event. It is also a clinical demonstration of the tax compounding into a single morning. He had been levying it against himself for years, in every speech where he disclosed the architecture of his moral universe to men who did not share it. The convention paid the back tax in one transaction. He was 36. Pause on that. 36. The age at which most men are still calling themselves young. La Rochefoucauld, the Duke, who survived the wars of the Fronde and lived to write the most lethal collection of maxims in any European language, wrote that we promise according to our hopes and perform according to our fears. The honest man performs his fears in advance. He volunteers them. He has not learned that a fear named is a fear armed in the hand of whoever is listening. The honest man hears these stories and feels exonerated. He is not a Roman. He is not an Englishman in 1618. He is not a Jacobin. He has not made enemies of triumvirs or kings or revolutionary committees. He is a software engineer in Manchester. He is a sales director in Reading. He is a father of 2 in a suburb of Birmingham. The stakes, he tells himself, are not the same. The mechanism, he tells himself, is not active in his life. Read that twice and listen for the lie inside it. The mechanism does not require triumvirs. The mechanism requires only an environment in which one man's disclosures are available to other men whose interests do not align with his own. The mechanism is not historical. The mechanism is structural. It runs in marriages. It runs in workplaces. It runs in friendships that include a man with a longer memory than his own. It runs in the comments section of a forum he posted in 12 years ago. It runs anywhere. A record of a man's interior life can be retrieved by a person who will one day prefer the man absent. The honest man's first protest is that he has done nothing wrong. He is correct. This is irrelevant. The tax is not levied on wrongdoing. It is levied on visibility. He has been visible for years to people whose patience exceeded his suspicion. Their patience is now expressed as the small accumulating costs he has been writing off as bad luck. A man was given his programming before he had the vocabulary to refuse it. He was taught that openness is virtue, that disclosure is honor, that holding back is the mark of a cowardly soul. The men who taught him are not in the room with him now. The room he is in is governed by men who were taught nothing of the kind. It is not a fair fight. It has never been a fair fight. It cannot be made fair by being more honest. It can only be made fair by being more accurate. There is a transition in the script of every intelligent man's life that is rarely marked at the time it happens. It is the moment he stops trying to be more transparent and starts trying to be more accurate. Accuracy is not the same as disclosure. Accuracy is the precise calibration of what a given room deserves and nothing further. The honest man has been confusing accuracy with confession his entire adult life. Now the third name enters, and it is the only one that matters operationally. Tactical opacity. The disciplined refusal to disclose anything the situation does not strictly require. Tactical opacity is not deception. It is not lying. It is not the construction of a false self. It is the closure of the gap between your interior life and the external air, a gap that has been leaking, in your case, for as long as you have been a man inside language. The gap was opened in childhood by people who told you that closing it would make you bad. They were teaching you a position. The position was visible, available, retrievable, taxable. They thought they were teaching you to be good. The world they prepared you for is not the world you have to live in. Tactical opacity has 3 operating principles. None of them require deception. All of them require discipline. Speech is a weapon, and weapons are drawn for cause. Most of what you say in a given week is drawn without cause. Reduce the draws. Most rooms do not require a contribution from you. Most contributions are taxes you pay to feel present. Stop paying. Be present silently. The discomfort of saying nothing in a room that expects you to speak is the exact discomfort the room is hoping you will resolve by speaking. Refuse the resolution. Let the room hold its own discomfort. The room will adjust around you. That is the calibration. The man who governs his speech governs the room. The man who does not is governed by it. Disclosure is paid for by the person disclosing. Free disclosure is a translation error. When a person asks a question whose answer would expose your interior, the cost of answering is yours alone. The questioner pays nothing. The transaction is asymmetric. Most asymmetric transactions feel polite because both parties have agreed not to name the asymmetry. Name it. Privately, internally, without speaking. Then choose, in private, what to give and what to withhold. The choice is the whole work. You do not need to announce the withholding. The withholding is the work. The honest man's signature move is the qualifier, the clarifier, the footnote, the sentence after the sentence that explains what he meant. Stop adding. The sentence is the sentence. The room is a smarter listener than the honest man assumes. The room hears the first sentence and is constructing a model from it. Every footnote you add tells the room 2 things: that the first sentence was insufficient and that you are willing to keep paying for its insufficiency. Both observations downgrade you. The qualifier is not humility. The qualifier is bleed. Stop the bleed. Baltasar Gracian, the 17th century Spanish Jesuit who was reading the Spanish court the way a surgeon reads a body, wrote it more cleanly than any English-speaking man has managed since. Be a stranger to yourself and to others, that they may not penetrate you. He did not mean self-alienation. He meant that the man, fully transparent to himself in public, has presented his audience with a translation. He has done the work of his enemies for them. Be inscrutable, Gracian wrote, and you will be revered. Be inscrutable, the modern man reads, and panics. He has been told inscrutability is dishonest. He has been told wrong. Sun Tzu put the same insight into a sentence that has survived 25 centuries because it is the entire science. All warfare is based on deception. He did not mean the world is a battlefield. He meant that any environment in which interests can diverge, and that is every environment, including the one you call home, is governed by what is known and unknown. The man whose interior is fully known has nothing left to govern. He has surrendered the government of himself to whoever takes the trouble to read him. He pays the tax forever. In installments he cannot itemize. Machiavelli, the diplomat, the Florentine, the man who watched the Borgias rise and the Medici return, and the republic he loved, collapse around the calculations of men who never bled where it could be measured, wrote in The Prince, that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. He is most often misread on this point. He was not advocating deception, he was diagnosing a population. The population of honest men was, in his analysis, infinite. The population of inscrutable men was scarce. The arithmetic of the scarce against the infinite is the entire history of who governs whom. The infinite pay, the scarce collect. There is an audit coming. It is private. Nobody will see it but you. Take the last serious conflict you lost, the meeting that turned, the friendship that cooled, the negotiation that ended with you on the wrong side of a number. Run it back. Find the sentence you said before anyone asked you to say it. The sentence that delivered, in advance, the information your opponent then used. That is the sentence the roadmap promised you. You will be carrying a different relationship to it by the time the video ends. In the comments below, write the sentence you wish you had not said, not the worst lie you have told. The most honest thing you said that was used against you, that you would now pay to take back. The exact words, type them out. The men who type them out are conducting the audit. The men who scroll past it are still paying the tax. There is no third option. Thinking about it is the tax. Naming the sentence is the exit. Add at the bottom of your comment, "I will never bleed again where I have not been invited to bleed." Type it as written, not as an opinion, as a contract you are signing with yourself in the comment section of a video about exactly the discipline you are about to begin. This is a channel about the architecture nobody told you was load-bearing. There is a video on this channel about the 7 types of men society uses, humiliates, and discards the catalogue of design flaws the machine enters through. The bleed reflex is the entry point for at least 3 of them. Without that catalogue, this video is a diagnosis you will forget by Tuesday. With it, the exits start appearing. Watch it next. Stay subscribed if you can hold what is coming. The subscribe button is not a favor to a creator. It is a refusal to let the algorithm domesticate your attention into the easier content that has been training the reflex out of every other man you know. Press it if you intend to remain ungovernable. Do not press it if you would rather continue paying the tax in silence and calling the silence peace. This is your cold awakening.